put these recordings. We put these recordings on YouTube, and they will be uploaded in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So you can rewatch this one or any of the other diabetes cooking clubs that we have done in the past. So, and again, welcome to October's virtual diabetes cooking club. And the topic today is Go Nuts for Nuts. We've got the great Isabel and Kim with us today. And before we pass it on to Kim to do some education, please know that the information that you are hearing today in all of our virtual diabetes cooking clubs is intended to be just general health information. And whenever you're hearing this information, you always should take that information to your provider and ensure that that is the best information for you. So it's never a substitute for medical advice from your provider. All right, let's get started. We're going to pass it on to Kim, and she is going to start talking to us about nuts.
All right, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Kim House. I'm a registered dietitian and diabetes educator. Today's topic, I'm going to be starting with an overview of nutrients and how that's important for diabetes. We're going to discuss nuts, especially what they are, and highlight a few, talk over the recipes today through the class, talk about allergies, and end with benefits to diabetes. So when we talk about just nutrients in general, just giving you an overview that the 3 most important ones to diabetes management, to helping our blood sugar staying controlled, are going to be our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fats. When we talk about balance and diabetes, we talk about what does that mean, and with these 3 nutrients I just mentioned. So meals and snacks that are balanced consider all 3 of those nutrients, which keeps your blood sugar steady. So if you notice the green line that comes across that graph, you see, that's a very steady, stable blood sugar because the meal was balanced. It has your carbs, your fats, and your proteins. But when we talk about a blood sugar that is unstable, that blue line, that real high roller coaster line we might have experienced, the meal could have been unbalanced, which means maybe it was carb only. Maybe it just considered, some protein. It wasn't a mixture of all 3 of those nutrients. And this is important when we talk about diabetes and keeping our blood sugars steady and stable. And today we talk about nuts and how these provide us with the nutrients that we need for our diabetes. So in general, an overview that nuts supply all 3 of those nutrients. So just reminding that carbohydrates are going to be the nutrient that supplies us energy, and actually nuts supply us with fiber as a source of carbohydrate. Nuts are also very high in protein, which keeps our blood sugars where they should stay, where they really, really stable. And actually, nuts are a source of plant protein. And then they also are a very good source of dietary fat, which also helps keep our blood sugars very steady. They're a source of heart healthy, or what we also might know as unsaturated fat. Nuts are seeds of plants, and most are actually from trees. We are going to highlight a couple of different nuts, one of which is not even from a tree, and that's our peanuts. Not sure if you knew that or not, but peanuts are actually the seeds of legumes. A few of our nuts actually grow inside fruits. Other ones don't even open to expose seeds. So nuts are so variable, and they come from different sources, and they provide different benefits of flavor and some nutrients. They're also flavorful. They can be eaten by themselves, some of them, or they could be a very nice recipe ingredient, as we'll see today. Most, if not all, are loaded with B vitamins, especially the 2 that we are highlighting today, which are so helpful for our energy. So, throwing this in the chat, have you ever tried or used pecans before? let us know.
All right. Simple little chat question for us to get us started this morning. Have you tried or used pecans before? We are getting some pecan lovers in the chat. We've got somebody saying, yes, yum pecans always. Yes.
Great.
So we have some
Great.
pecan lovers.
Good.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Kim. We are going to pass along to Isabel, and she is going to highlight our first recipe today, which you should have received in your email this morning. And she is going to be highlighting and showing us how to make pecan crusted chicken. So take it away, Isabel.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Isabel. Thank you for all that introduction. And I am the cook today. So, we are going to be making this pecan crusted chicken and salad greens. This is a really, really nice recipe. It has good protein from the chicken, from the pecans. We've got some great salad greens and some radishes and some green onions for some vegetables. And it's just a really nice flavor profile. So what we're going to do is we are going to make the chicken, we're going to make the salad. And if you're following along with your recipe, I'm going to do a quick tweak and say that I am going to cut up my green onions first, just for food safety, because I'm going to be using this cutting board for chicken. And obviously I don't want to be cutting up my raw vegetables on the same cutting board that I used my raw chicken on for food safety. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut up a couple of these green onions. These are really gonna be kind of like a nice little garnish, add a nice little flavor to our salad when we put it all together. And today for my chicken, I'm actually gonna be using an air fryer. So if you're, again, following along with your recipe, you will see that you can either use an oven for this recipe or you can use an air fryer. The air fryer is nice because it kind of crisps up the chicken tenders a little bit. But again, of course, it's totally fine to do all of this in your oven as well. So I've got my green onions chopped up. I'm going to go ahead and take those off of my cutting board, throw them into my bowl here so then I can start using this cutting board for my raw chicken, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be kind of making a like coating or a breading for this chicken that really highlights the pecans that Kim was talking about. So I've already preheated my air fryer to 375. So that's all preheated and good to go. And now I'm going to put out my ingredients for my breading mixture. So you're going to need 3 shallow dishes. One of them is going to be a dish for eggs. One of them is going to be a dish for flour. And then one of them is going to be a dish for the breadcrumb pecan mixture. So in my dish with my eggs, I'm just going to give them a nice little whisk. If you want, you can add some water or a splash of milk to kind of scramble them a little bit more. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my flour and my breadcrumb mixture to the other 2 dishes that you see on my counter. So while I'm doing this, I am curious, and you guys can all type this in the chat, has anybody ever used nuts as a coating for chicken before?
All right, we've got one person saying yes, they have. We've got another saying no, and somebody saying not yet. So I have a feeling they're gonna like your pecan crusted chicken recipe. Somebody's always saying yes a long time ago. So very good.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. And I have to call out the person that said not yet. I love that because that means they're gonna try this recipe. So all right, so in my first dish, I have 1 cup of flour. In my second dish so far, I have 2 eggs that are scrambled and beaten. And then in my last dish, I'm going to add my pecan breadcrumb seasoning mixture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding 1 cup of plain breadcrumbs to this third dish, followed by 1 cup of my chopped pecans, which this is really amazing. I didn't know that at Meijer they sold pecans that were already like chopped into tiny, tiny bits, which is so fantastic because then I didn't have to chop them up myself. So they're called pecan chips if anybody is looking for them. They're in the baking section at Meijer. So I adding 1 cup of that pecan chips to my, and then just in case anybody is curious, these are just 100% pecans. So that's all that is in this bag. There's nothing added to it. It's not like, you know, pecan flavored chocolate chips or anything like that. It's strictly crushed up pecans. So I've got those. Got 1 cup of the breadcrumbs so far, the 1 cup of the pecans right in my dish, and then I'm gonna add half of a teaspoon of nutmeg to this, which is really wonderful. I don't know if anybody has ever really cooked with nutmeg before. I know that a lot of people bake with nutmeg, but when you cook with nutmeg, it adds a really nice, like a nice flavor, a nice little nutty flavor to all of your dishes as well. So I heard from somebody that if they are making macaroni and cheese, they add like a dash of nutmeg and it adds like a super depth of flavor. So anyway, nutmeg, magic ingredient. All right. So I've added my half a teaspoon of nutmeg into this bowl as well. And then the final thing that I'm going to add to this bowl is some orange zest, which I've already zested my orange today. And I'm just going to throw that in there as well. Then I'm going to give that a nice little toss to get everything kind of mixed up and good to go in here. And then we're going to start kind of coating our chicken to put in our air fryer for this nice, delicious chicken dish. All right, got a nice little mix here. I can smell the nutmeg and the orange zest. It's such a nice flavor scent. We teach cooking classes. If any of you have never been on our Cooking with Bronson classes, one of our facilitators there used to call this smell-o-vision. She wishes smell-o-vision was a thing so you guys could all smell what we were cooking. All right, so this is all mixed up and good to go. So now we're gonna move on to our next step, which is coating our chicken breast. So I have some chicken tenderloins that I bought from the grocery store. And what we're gonna do is we're going to first dip this in the flour, then we're gonna dip this in the egg, and then we're going to dip this in the breadcrumb mixture. And so we're gonna repeat that a couple of times with these little chicken tenders. And so you guys don't have to watch me dip all of the chicken tenders, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna dip a couple of them, and then I'll save this to dip the rest of it later. So I'm not gonna be wasting any of the chicken, but I also don't wanna have you guys have to spend 15 minutes watching me dip all the chicken. So I've got my first chicken breast. I'm gonna go ahead nicely coat this in the flour. Then I'm gonna coat this right here in the egg. And then I'm going to follow through with this pecan breadcrumb orange zest nutmeg mixture. One thing, again, that I do want to mention for food safety is when you are done with this recipe, when you're done making this recipe, do not keep the breadcrumb mixture or the egg mixture or the flour mixture. That's a food safety thing. And unfortunately, because we're dipping, raw chicken into these, 3 things, they cannot safely be saved. So make sure you discard it when you are done with it, even if you don't use all of the mixture. All right, throwing that into my air fryer. Got a couple more pieces here, and then we're gonna be making a really nice sauce that we're gonna be, or dressing that we're gonna put on top of the chicken, on top of our salad greens when everything is cooked and good to go. So while I am finishing dipping my my chicken breast here. I would love to know from all of you watching this at home, would you add any other seasonings to this pecan mixture other than the nutmeg? I'd love to hear your opinions.
All right, we've got a couple answers rolling in. So based upon this recipe, she's got some breadcrumbs, pecans, some orange zest, and some nutmeg. What else would you add? This sounds like a delicious fall recipe. It just makes me think that your kitchen is going to smell absolutely amazing when that is frying up in the air fryer. We've got some people saying that they would add a little bit of garlic. Classic, right? Garlic goes good with everything. Some tarragon.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I love that idea.
And then we've got somebody saying that they would maybe do a little combination of pecans, walnuts, and some garlic.
That sounds fantastic. Oh my goodness, I love that idea. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna close my air fryer. Thank you everybody for sharing what you just did in the chat. I'm gonna close my air fryer. I'm gonna start baking this chicken. I'm gonna wash my hands, move this raw chicken cutting board off of my counter, and then we can start on the dressing. So while I'm doing that, Tina, do you have another question that you could ask our participants while I'm getting all of that organized?
Oh, let's see. What question do we have today? Well, I also think about maybe what other types of proteins you might be able to crust with nuts. I don't personally use nuts very often as a crust, but I wonder if it would be a good option for any sort of a fish. Has anybody done any other proteins with a nut crust other than chicken? Ooh, we've got somebody making nut crusted pork chops, some turkey tenderloins or cod. That was a good thought. I didn't think about turkey tenderloins. I was thinking salmon. I think nuts and salmon sound really good together, right? Two powerhouses when it comes to those good unsaturated fats. Somebody says that a restaurant called Fieldstone, which I think is in Kalamazoo, has a pecan coated fish. So those sound like some really good options. So this is a good base, this pecan crust that Isabella is making for us. But if you don't have chicken in your fridge or handy, and you've got maybe some fish or something along those lines, realize that this crust can also be versatile to some other protein choices as well.
Oh, that sounds delicious. Oh, that idea. I love the idea of adding the fish to it. I think that sounds fantastic. And did I hear correctly that somebody does a pecan crusted vegetable dish?
Oh, no, that didn't get shared, but that's a very interesting concept too. I think there are some like baking sheet recipes where you do your roasted vegetables and there's some nuts included into that combination. It'd be a good earthy, nutty fall recipe too.
That sounds fantastic. Oh, I love hearing all these ideas. This is why I love these cooking classes. I hear so many ideas from you all. So thank you for sharing. All right. So our chicken tenders are starting to cook in our air fryer. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to put together the dressing for this recipe. So the dressing for this recipe calls for maple syrup, some barbecue sauce, some orange juice, some olive oil, and then some optional salt and pepper. So if you notice, I did not add any salt or pepper to my chicken. These pecan chips already have a little bit of no sodium in them, so that's really good. So I am going to add some salt and pepper just to this dressing since I don't have any salt and pepper on my chicken, just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I want to add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup is what the recipe calls for. However, I accidentally bought honey barbecue sauce rather than a tangy barbecue sauce. So if I were to put the entire 1/4 cup of maple syrup plus our honey barbecue sauce plus our orange juice, I feel like the sauce is going to be a little bit too sweet. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually gonna cut my maple syrup down by 2 tablespoons. Again, when you make any type of change to your recipe, if you use different ingredients, if you use different amounts of ingredients, that of course is gonna change the nutrient analysis. So keep that in mind. But for this one specifically, I'm gonna be just cutting down a little bit on the maple syrup. So instead of a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, I'm gonna be adding 2 tablespoons of maple syrup to my dressing. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of my barbecue sauce to my little dressing container here. And then what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be adding my orange juice after this. And the recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of orange juice. All right. And then a 1/4 cup of olive oil or vegetable oil or canola oil. I did not have any olive oil in my pantry, so I'm going to be using canola oil in this recipe as well. So, and then one more thing, I'm just going to be adding, again, a tiny bit of salt and pepper, because remember, there's going to be some sodium in the barbecue sauce. There's going to be some sodium that I'm going to add with the salt and the pepper. But again, make sure that you have, excuse me, that you're paying attention to the ingredients that you're adding into your dressing. All right, so the last little bit, little tiny shake of salt and a little tiny shake of pepper. Then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna mix everything up. And then this dressing will be ready to add to the salad, which of course, since the chicken is still cooking, I will not be showing you the chicken until the end of this class with everything put together. So, all right, I've got my little barbecue sauce situated. I'm gonna set that aside until I'm ready to serve up my chicken. So with that, I'll pass it back on to Kim.
All right. Well, good morning again, everybody. So just taking a peek at this recipe, you can notice whether you see it on the screen or in front of you, print it off on your phone or on paper, that at the bottom there is a nutrition analysis, and that will give us our carbohydrates, our protein, our dietary fat. And as you can see, the numbers are pretty equal, which means this is a very balanced meal with your greens, with your protein, with your chicken. We've got some carbohydrates just naturally with some of these, the syrup, the barbecue sauce, some of your breadcrumbs. And there are ways we're going to talk about here briefly that we can change that up. So with pecans, did you know that with this recipe that Isabel just made, that they are a nut from a hickory tree? And being that they are a non-animal source, they contain 0 cholesterol because they are natural, they are sodium free, they are very low in carb themselves, with a natural sweetness though, kind of rich and buttery, but so packed full of vitamins and minerals. So if you were to count out 19 pecan halves, you would have a 200 calorie approximate 20 gram of heart healthy fat, a very good source of fiber, low carb, and a good source of protein. So pecans by themselves are a powerhouse snack or part of an ingredient of a recipe. So let's look more closely at this recipe. We talked about balance earlier, you know, that carb, that protein, and that fat. So if you joined us before, we kind of look at our recipes just like this. The carbohydrates that we do look at this recipe will be from our flour, perhaps the splash of milk that was added to the eggs, the breadcrumbs, the maple syrup, the barbecue sauce, and the orange juice. Of course, the protein would be from the chicken tenders, the eggs that we added, and the pecans that dietary fat is from the pecans and the olive oil. We haven't seen this yet, but there is salad greens and other vegetables are onions, scallions, radishes, and romaine lettuce. So boy, does this cover all bases. It's a beautiful recipe, a nice actual fall fresh dish. So let's talk about how we can really change things up though. Starting with the flour. We may have a different flour in our home. If we have a gluten allergy, we can use a gluten-free flour. Others like to use a whole wheat flour just for some more fiber. The breadcrumbs that we could change would be, again, those with a gluten allergy could use a gluten-free breadcrumb. There are flavored or seasoned breadcrumbs. We could vary it up that way. We could always substitute the egg whites for the egg yolks. Usually you use 2 egg whites for every egg yolk, so we can make it even more heart healthy and remove those yolks and just do the egg whites. So I'm not sure if anybody has ever done that in a recipe. We could vary up the dressing. Isabel, she's already bought in utilizing honey barbecue. You could change that up and really use any kind of variable kind of dressing you want if it's already prepared. If you like something with an olive oil base, this is meant for a little sweeter dressing. You could use a Trop 50, maybe a low sugar orange juice to drop some of those sugars. And then the greens, you could use a salad mix that has a different green mixture, spring mix of sorts, any, romaine, spinach, whatever you like. And then really if there's salt that's added that is actually optional in this recipe, you could either leave it out and season it with something else. We've already talked about garlic and, other seasonings that we like. Tarragon, you never know what you could try in these things. Garlic seems to go a pretty long way. So this recipe, you could just really kind of make it your own, starting with the seasonings, the dressings, and even what you wrap the chicken around, what we talked about earlier, the coating. So if we're ready, what is your favorite dish or snack with peanuts? Go ahead and throw that in the chat.
All right, what is your favorite dish or a snack with peanuts? Go ahead and unmute and share, or feel free to drop that into the chat. I'm gonna have to say mine is just classic apples and peanut butter. Yes, Jill's with me, apples. Apples and nuts, apple and peanut butter. What are your other favorite ways to use peanuts? Peanut butter on apple. All right, I'm with the majority here. What about you, Kim? What's your favorite way to use peanuts?
Myself, peanut butter is delicious on, yes, apples, peanuts themselves, and you could just change up the mix of other nuts you put it with, or dried fruit, kind of like a trail mix, I guess. You could throw that into just sort of like a on-the-go snack.
All right. Yes. Well, we are here for a nut class, but we've got some peanut butter lovers. So peanut butter and apple, peanut butter and banana, peanut butter and celery. And then we've got one individual who says she loves to make a Kung Pao chicken stir fry with peanuts in it. So yes,
Yeah.
nuts are a really good option in some of our stir fry dishes too. So great suggestions here. So how convenient and funny, Isabel, that we have all these peanut butter lovers in our class today. So Isabel is just finishing up her touches there and getting set up. She is going to show us how to make a homemade peanut butter. So you got that recipe in your email this morning as well. And then after she makes her homemade peanut butter, she's also going to make some peanut butter power bites, a very classic recipe, good for snacking, good for a breakfast option too, in my opinion. And so we are going to pass it back over to Isabel.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
We got you.
Awesome. Okay, well, that sounds lovely because I am in good company because I also love peanut butter. When I was a kid, I refused to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It was only peanut butter sandwiches. And interestingly, that has continued through my adulthood. I still do not like jelly and peanut butter together. I do not like the combination, but I do love peanut butter by itself. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our homemade peanut butter, and then what's really cool is we're actually gonna be using the homemade peanut butter that we make today in our Power Bites recipe. So one thing I do want to mention is that the peanut butter Power Bites, the analysis that you see was not used with the homemade peanut butter. The software that we use for the nutrient analysis wouldn't let me, for some reason, use the homemade peanut butter recipe. So just know that the analysis that you see on your peanut butter Power Bites is made with just like a regular Jif peanut butter. So it might change a little bit, which I'll let Kim or Tina talk a little bit about if you use the homemade peanut butter. But today we're going to be using the homemade peanut butter in these peanut butter Power Bites. If you don't feel like making homemade peanut butter, of course, you can use regular peanut butter in these peanut butter Power Bites. So homemade peanut butter is super, super easy to make. All you need is 3 ingredients: some peanuts, some honey, and some optional salt. So of course, because we want to make sure we're not eating way too much sodium, I have bought a lightly salted peanuts. If you're going to add salt to this recipe, I would recommend using unsalted peanuts. I am not going to add salt to this recipe because I've already got salt in my peanuts right here. So what you're going to do is, to a food processor, you're going to add 2 cups of these dry roasted peanuts. All right. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put the top on, and you're actually going to let it run without adding in the honey yet. You're going to add that in after it has crushed up these peanuts. So what's interesting is when you're making the homemade peanuts, it's going to seem weird at first because it's like a totally dry ingredient that you're adding to this, but as the processor processes the peanuts, it's going to start to kind of change consistency. You're going to see it change to different stages. So it's going to start out obviously with these dry peanuts, then it's going to kind of change to a crumb, and then it's going to change to a smooth and creamy peanut butter. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add this to my food processor, and while the peanuts are starting to get processed and crushed, what we're going to do is we're going to start on our peanut butter. If I can get my thing to lock, we're going to start on our peanut butter Power Bites recipe.
Isabel, it looks like the blade is loose.
I'm sorry?
It looks like the blade is loose.
It is. I didn't even see that. The peanuts got in the middle of my blade here. That's why it wasn't closing. Okay, this is going to be interesting. All right, I'm going to have to restart. Just going to throw these peanuts right here. Throw my blade back on, make sure it's not. I'm going to put this on first, my food processor. Then I'm going to add my peanuts to it. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Okay. So while this is processing, we're going to start our peanut butter power. So if you are following along with the recipes that you received, the peanut butter Power Bites use a combination of a couple of different ingredients. We're going to use some oats, some dry oats. We're going to be using some protein powder. We're going to be using a little bit of cinnamon. We're going to be using a little bit of honey and some chia seeds, a little bit of milk. So a lot of good ingredients. All right. Okay, this is going to be interesting, trying to talk while my food processor is going. Usually when we do this, we mute. So
Isabel, when you just had it on, we actually couldn't hear much on our end.
really? Okay, well that's great then. All right, well then I'll just start it and then I'll just talk really loud for my sake. Okay.
Oh, No, yeah, while you're trying to talk, yeah, that is hard. No, we couldn't. We can't hear the food processor, but we can't hear you over the food processor.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually move my processor to the other side of the kitchen so that way I can walk through this because I actually cannot hear anything that you guys are saying. So with that, Tina, can you ask the chat if anybody here has ever made a power bite before while I move this over?
Well, yes, I want to know who in the room has made homemade peanut butter first, right? I have never done this, so this is super exciting for me. So who in the room have you guys made a homemade peanut butter? And also say yes to peanut butter, no to peanut butter if you've made it homemade at home before, or have you made any of these power bites before? When we're going out to events, Isabel and I, and we share recipes, these power bites are such a popular recipe to share with. People absolutely love them. So, Isabel, somebody said that they made a homemade peanut butter in their home economics type of class in the 1970s. So that's fun. And then we've got some people saying, no, they've not made peanut butter, but yes, they've made peanut butter power bites. And then Lynn says she's not made either. So this is wonderful.
All right, well, that's good. That's beautiful, but you'll have another peanut butter power bite recipe to add to your collection. So for these peanut butter power bites, we're going to be adding 1.5 cups of oats to my bowl. All right. Followed by some protein powder. So you can use either chocolate or vanilla protein powder for these power bites. The store has vanilla, and so that's what I'm going to be using. So you're going to be adding about 2 scoops of protein powder to our bowl. Good. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Right? Followed by 1.5 tablespoons of chia seeds. Now, chia seeds are so great. They are, first of all, really nice to add to a lot of different things. I mean, you can add them to smoothies, you can add them to power bites, you can add them to baked goods. Plus, there's so many benefits of chia seeds as well. They're a good source of protein and fiber, healthy fats. So lots of good things come out of chia seeds. So for these protein powder bites, we're going to be adding 1.5 tablespoons of the chia seeds. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add our honey. I'm going to mix this first to get the dry ingredients incorporated. And then I'm going to add in my honey and my milk and my vanilla while I wait for the peanut butter to finish grinding and processing. So right now, the only things that I have in my bowl are some cinnamon, some oats, some protein powder, and some chia seeds. All right. Okay, that's good and mixed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of my wet ingredients. So this calls for 3 tablespoons of honey, and then 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Okay. We're going to add 2 to 4 tablespoons of the non-fat milk. So when I add my peanut butter, I'm going to decide how much milk I'm going to add to the power bites because we don't want these power bites to be too wet and we don't want them to be too dry. So when I add my peanut butter, I'll have a better idea of what my consistency of this power bite is. All right, now my vanilla. Okay, so I'm going to check on my peanut butter, see how it is looking. And while I'm doing that, I would like to know from the group if would anybody add anything to these power bites? Like, can you think of any add-ins that you think would taste pretty delicious in these power bites?
All right, very good, Isabel. Thank you. All right, so she has got oats, she has got protein powder, and Kim Know that there's a question in the chat also, wanting to know if there's a certain kind of protein powder to use. So I said you might talk about that in the next section. She's got cinnamon, chia seeds, peanut butter, honey, vanilla. What else would you guys add to these Power Bite recipes? And Isabel, you will be happy to hear that somebody said they've made Power Bites before and used them at a slow pitch softball tournament in order to keep the team's energy up during the games. They are a powerhouse of energy. So people said that they might add hemp and ground flaxseed. Absolutely. A little sweetness with some mini chocolate chips. I know you like that, right? We have a recipe with some chocolate chip Power Bites in there too. So yes, a little sweetness goes a long way too. Maybe even some dried fruit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love Power Bite recipes. They're so easy and they're delicious. And I mean, like if you're a person that likes to sleep in, they're a good grab and go breakfast. So there's so many benefits to them. All right. So the peanut butter looks amazing. So it's just so interesting to me, cooking, science, all of those things, because what was once dried peanuts. Oh man, my food processor is not being very kind today. There we go. All right, which once was dried peanuts are now this lovely creamy peanut butter. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a half cup of peanut butter to this recipe. So look at that. It smells amazing. It smells like peanut butter, which is so fantastic. And which I know Kim is going to be talking about this in a little bit, but I do want to mention here before she goes into that if you cannot eat peanut butter due to an allergy, there are some, changes. So there's some substitutions you can make. So just if you have an allergy, you can still have these delicious Power Bites. So I'm going to add my half a cup of peanut butter to my recipe here. Okay, good. Mix that all in. I have another Power Bite recipe that I do with kids and they love it. I do add mini chocolate chips and dried cranberries to that Power Bite recipe. It's kid approved. They absolutely love it. Okay, so I've got my peanut butter in here. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of milk and see how that is with our consistency. And then if I need more, I'll add a little bit more to it. All right. So mixing this up, you're going to see everything kind of start coming together, making a nice like round ball of kind of like, it looks like cookie dough. But the good news is this recipe is loaded with healthy fats and protein from the peanut butter. So it's looking like I'm going to need to add a little bit more liquid. So I'm going to start with 1 more tablespoon of milk, see what that does to my consistency. And then if I need more, then of course I'll add more to this. Do we have any questions in the chat while I'm mixing this up? Or has anybody mentioned anything? Have any questions about anything?
Yeah, while you're mixing, great. Kim, if you want to address, is there a preferred type of protein powder to use? And I'll also just make note that Isabella is using not just a regular dairy milk, but she is using the Fairlife brand. So that is a higher protein milk too, just to increase that protein content of these balls even a little bit further. Kim, any questions on the protein powder?
Yeah, so for the protein powder, what I like to suggest is that, first of all, there's different flavors, so it just depends on the flavor. But for the brand, what I want to address is that the main ingredient usually is either a plant-based, like a pea protein or a soy protein, or perhaps it could be whey protein. So it's kind of part of a dairy component. So if you have any sort of dairy intolerances, I recommend a plant-based protein powder. So whether it's pea or soy-based. Otherwise, whey protein is just fine. You can find protein powders, very standard ones at Meijer, Walmart, Sam's Club. I prefer Muscle Milk. It's a genuine series. It's a very standard, so I like that. I use that personally. but you don't have to buy anything that's fancy or has all these added things in it, because that's not what we need in these recipes.
Generally
Oh.
speaking, like 1 scoop protein powder for like 15, 20 grams of protein is
Absolutely.
a general good recommendation to look for. And Isabel, if you are still rolling there and can take a question too, we've got a question. How long will the peanut butter power bites and the homemade peanut butter themselves like last? How long will they keep for?
So, I am not quite sure about the peanut butter itself. That would be a question that I would have to look up to make sure that I give you the right time frame. As far as the peanut butter power bites go, though, so usually I say with the peanut butter power bites about 3 days, but lots of times they don't last that long. It really depends. But I usually say about 3 days for good texture, and then to keep them in a fridge. So storing them in an airtight container in the fridge can also kind of help with that as well. So
And
yeah, not
I Googled real quick, so you don't have to come back to that question about storing homemade peanut butter, and it looks like at room temperature, generally speaking, might last up to a month, maybe up to 2 months in the refrigerator, and you can also freeze it, it looks like, for up to 3 months.
wow, that's amazing. And then freezing it would be so great, because if you freeze it and then you can use this in like smoothies, that would just be fantastic. It would be a great way to chill out your smoothie, make it a good texture, and then use up some of that peanut butter as well. Thank you for looking that up, Tina. I appreciate it. Okay, so our peanut butter power bites are done. So I haven't rolled all of them because, again, I don't want to have you guys watch me on screen roll a bunch of power bites, but this is what they're gonna look like, a nice little power bite ball. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna clean up my little kitchen here. I'm gonna hand it back over to Kim and Tina, and then we'll come back to me at the end where I can show you everything and how everything looks displayed.
Thank you, Isabel.
All right, beautiful. So let's go back to that homemade recipe, homemade peanut butter recipe. Yeah. So Isabel had mentioned about maybe this being a little different nutrition analysis than the Jif that she used in the Power Bite recipe. So I just wanted to point you down to the bottom of each of these recipes. You can see the nutrition analysis. There is a difference when you compare it to like a standard jarred peanut butter. There is caloric, so the calories are reduced. Jif is 190 calories for 2 tablespoons, so this is 150 for 2 tablespoons. There is less fat, so 12 grams versus 16. The saturated fat is considerably less, almost in half. The sodium is this is 50 grams of sodium, where in a jarred product it'd be 140 grams. Everything else, the carbs, fats, or the carbs and proteins are pretty much the same. So you're getting a lower fat, lower calorie product, making this at home for the same serving size. And then you look at these Power Bites and the serving size, everybody is 2. So giving you that 140 calories, you're getting a balanced snack. So it's 16 grams of carbohydrate. We can boost the protein up even more, as Isabel was using a Fairlife high protein milk versus a cow's milk that can boost that protein grams up some. I saw some hemp and some flaxseed. You can add different seeds, pumpkin seeds. Boy, we can vary this baby up. So let's move on to talking about peanuts themselves, and then we'll get back to this recipe. That peanuts are in the legume family. They actually grow below the ground. They're not from a tree. They're actually in with soybeans, green peas, and lentils. So we consume more than 6 pounds of peanuts a year. And I believe that, especially us peanut butter lovers, over our celery, our apples, you name it, plain, we get it. Because it's a plant, it is cholesterol free, so it's good for our heart. It's sodium-free naturally, and it's low in carbs. The peanuts themselves are packed, especially full of vitamins, but specifically B vitamins for energy. And when you look there, 1/4 cup gives us a couple hundred calories. It gives us 18 grams of heart healthy fat, some good dietary fiber, a little bit of carb, and some good protein. So peanuts themselves are great. And when we look at the recipe that we just, the Power Bite recipe, let's check out the balance here. Let's go forward to the balance slide. Yeah, so again, we're just kind of picking it apart, looking at each of these ingredients, putting them into categories. Carbohydrates, that would be the rolled oats. If you have a gluten intolerance or allergy, we can find gluten-free oats. The protein powder, I believed that Isabel used, is whey-based, so it's dairy-based. But again, we can find a plant-based protein powder in a variety of flavors. Chia seeds are a source of fiber, so it's a carbohydrate. Peanut butter has a little bit of carb in it. Honey, vanilla extract, and then our milk, whether we use a dairy base or a lactose-free based high protein milk. Protein itself comes from our protein powder. So 1 scoop of protein powder is like 16 grams of protein. So it's equal to eating a couple of eggs, or perhaps a very small piece of chicken, or a very small pork chop. So it's full of protein. Our chia seeds are a source of protein as well as our peanut butter, and those are good sources of fat. We don't have any vegetables in this. This could be a nice couple of these little Power Bites could be just a nice snack. We can follow up with some vegetables later on in the day. All right, so how do we really change this up? We've been talking about this through, but again, the question came in about the protein powder. There's different brands, there's different flavors, there's different bases of them. But like Tina said, if you can find one that's for every scoop, it's about 15 to 20 grams of protein. It's a very standard protein powder. It works well. You can also use like a protein drink. Premier Protein and Muscle Milk have their protein packaged drinks. It might change the profile a little bit, but it could be easy to add to this. The seeds. You could have seeds that are chia, hemp, flax, your pumpkin seeds. Boy, you can name any of those for that good fiber and fat and protein. Substituting the honey with another syrup, perhaps, agave. The non-fat cow's milk, we could substitute it with a lactose-free high protein, and perhaps we might add in some chocolate chips or perhaps some dried fruit. A lot of us like that. All right, so putting that aside, with nut allergies, these are for real. They are not created equal though. So because there is the term nut in many of these names of, walnuts, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts, peanuts, that doesn't mean they all grow on a tree. So remember, peanuts grow underground. They're considered a legume, where tree nut allergies are those that grow on trees. Almonds, Brazil nuts, cashews, hazelnuts, pecans, pistachios, and walnuts. So someone may have a peanut allergy and not have a tree nut allergy. Or they may have a touch of both. Not always do we have to avoid both if we're allergic to one. Usually we are followed by an allergist that helps us understand this. But both of them could be life-threatening. So definitely what I recommend is food label reading. If it says contains peanuts and you have a peanut allergy, stay away, find an alternative. If it says contain tree nuts, definitely find an alternative. Peanuts and tree nuts are 2 of the 8 common most food allergies. So there's different nut butters that are available, sunflower butter, almond butter. But again, it depends on what type of allergy we have. So consult with your allergist, but they're not all created equal. So we've got to kind of make sure that we keep ourselves safe. Peanut allergies are separate from tree nut allergies. And then I know that some seeds can actually be a part of these allergies too, in some relation. So we just got to be very, very careful what we're coming against with allergies. All right, so last but not least, nuts benefit to diabetes. We have diabetes and we're considering nuts. Go nuts for nuts. They can be quick. They can be a convenient item. They can be very blood sugar friendly, very versatile. We only highlighted 2 of them. There's so many different ones. They can be fiber rich, heart healthy with fats, protein packed, but remember, they're very calorically dense. They have lots of good heart healthy fats. So small portions are very, very powerful, but very beneficial.
All right, very good. We are going to take a look back at Isabel. If you have been looking at her, she has been busy displaying out those beautiful recipes that she put together for us. And we realize we're at 9:58. So, Isabel, take it away. I think you're still muted. There you go.
All right, so you can see here all 3 of our beautiful recipes that we made today. So I've got my dressing here. I'm just gonna drizzle that over my lovely salad, colorful. I added some carrots, even though that's not in the recipe, because I wanted to add a couple of more vegetables, because we always talk about eating a rainbow of vegetables. So I'll hold each of these up so you can see how beautiful and delicious they look. Here's our pecan crusted chicken salad. Here's our homemade peanut butter. Obviously, we're not going to eat this out of the bowl, but I wanted to show you what it looks like when it's all done and out of the food processor. And then finally, our peanut butter power bites.
Okay, but we might eat the peanut butter out of a bowl. I mean,
Let's be honest.
very good. All right. Those look absolutely beautiful. Love that you added that orange pop of color into that salad recipe. Those are very, very pretty. We've had a question come into the chat and says, how many tenderloins were a serving for that chicken salad? I know.
That's a great question. I don't know. Kim, do you know that? I know that you
Yeah, usually 2 to 3 with some of the salad greens is just perfect.
All right, very good. Well, we are at 9:59. Thank you so much, Isabel. I'm just going to share our PowerPoint screen one more time just to go over some last minute Q&A items. Kim, why don't you take it away on this?
Yeah, so briefly, if you are interested in diabetes education, talk to your primary care provider. There is a referral that is required for diabetes education. We have locations, South Haven, Bella Creek, Portage, whether it's diabetes specific and you feel like you need a comprehensive look, or if it is just nutrition based, talk to your primary care provider and let them know you would like a referral to diabetes education.
And in your guys' reminder email that you received this morning, along with the recipe, you received additional information on how to ask for a referral for diabetes education and medical nutrition therapy. So you have those resources in your email. And then lastly, we'll also just kind of go over some of the resources that we have at Bronson if you need assistance in finding a provider, or help with your MyChart or any billing questions. You have these available to you as well. Again, thank you all so much. We've received some comments, Isabel and Kim, that it was a great presentation, great education. We appreciate you guys participating in our Diabetes Cooking Club. Again, look out for us next month. We're going to be here again in November. I think we're doing friendly fat. So we're going to be highlighting some additional fat sources and how that plays a role into blood sugar friendly recipes for diabetes. And again, let us know. You can respond to that email if you have additional ideas. that you would like to see us highlight come 2025. Again, we appreciate you all. Thank you so much for joining. I will go ahead and stop the recording.